Welcome to DCS UH-1H Huey Startup Training. I'm Top Gun with the AKA War Dog Squadron. I'll be working off of checklist version 1.4 today, and just to be consistent with my other checklists, you'll see that some steps in this checklist are listed in red text. That means that if you're getting into a new aircraft, spawning it for the first time, and you're starting it for the first time, you'll not need to hit those particular steps in the checklist because they'll already be in the correct position. But if you do subsequently come back in and land and repair and shut down and you need to start the engine again, just be aware that you will need to check over those steps and make sure that you do those during the next startup. So without further ado, let's go ahead and close the cockpit doors. And if for some reason you have the cabin doors in the back open, I would suggest closing those as well. Otherwise, it's going to get really noisy. Let's go ahead and turn on the battery, forward positioned on, this far left switch. And you'll get a warning immediately after that. You can silence that with this switch right here. Let's go ahead and put the position lights to flash. You kind of have to crane your head, especially if you've got certain versions of track IR, but the position light panel is here, so flash is in the forward position. And while we're up there, we'll also hit the anti-collision lights. We'll put that into the forward position for on. And we'll do navigation position lights. We'll put that to bright, so the far right position on this rotary. And while we're at it, we'll turn on the interior gauge lights. So you've got console, secondary, co-pilot, pedestal, engine, and pilot. And you'll also have a warning light here as well. You can clear that out. And let's move on to AC power, which is this rotary here. So we'll set it to AC phase. And the inverter switch we'll set to spare on, which is already in the correct position. So that's one of the items in red text. And then move on to DC power. So we'll turn the main generator on and close the guard. And put the DC voltmeter selector to ESS bus. So this rotary here. And non-ESS bus set to normal on, that's already in the correct position. And starter generator into the start position, which is already in the correct position as well. Let's do the main fuel switch next, which is this guarded yellow switch, forward to on. And governor should already be in the forward position. I've got a Warthog controller and I've got set to one of the switches, so it frequently, because my Warthog syncs, it frequently sets it to emergencies, but you need to make sure that this is set into the forward position before you start the engine. Let's go ahead and do hydraulic controls forward to on and force trim forward to on. For the flight controls, go ahead and rotate the throttle all the way to open, which you can click and rotate on it. I've got a key bound, but I'm also doing it in the cockpit as well. And then once you've fully opened it, back it all the way back off. Reason being is you're basically taking it out of a fuel cutoff position and you're putting it to minimum idle. And make sure that the collective is full down. So moving on to the center stock here, turn on the transponder to standby, which is a right click on this right rotary here. And you'll see the warning light extinguish when you do that. And we'll put on power to the VHF radio, which is a right click on the bezel of this left rotary and set to whatever frequency is necessary. Then the next is your AM radio. So you're also right-clicking on the bezel of the left rotary for here as well, and set to the appropriate frequency. Some airfields you'll want to do the AM frequency, and others you'll want to do a UHF frequency. I'm a Kataisi, so I'm going to be using UHF, so I don't need to set a frequency for this one. And next is the UHF. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit on these panels. So you can either use presets or you can set it manually. So if you want to use presets, you need to set this rotary into the up position, and you'll be setting the preset channels with this knob right here, and you'll see it change in this window. So right click and left click, and you'll set these presets in the mission editor. But if you want to just set the frequency manually, just leave it in the middle position to man, and then set the frequency as needed. And once you've got that, you can turn power on to the radio by rotating this rotary to TR, or you can do TR plus G, which just means that you're doing transmit receive on the UHF and listening to the guard channel. And next, move back one to the C1611 panel, which is basically just these switches control what you're listening to as far as which radios, so you can selectively cancel some of these out if you don't want to listen to all of them, but I just leave them all in the on position. And depending on which radio you want to use, you'll have to set this rotary here. So INT means intercom, so you're going to be using that to contact that position to contact the ground crew. Position 1 is your FM radio, position 2 is your UHF radio, and position 3 is your AM radio. So since I'm using UHF, I'm going to put it to position 2. And next is our FM radio here, so set that to transmit receive and set your frequency as needed. And we'll go ahead and contact ATC for start clearance. Now, a lot of aircraft in DCS, if you don't have easy communications turned on in the options, you'll need to use the appropriate mic activation for the given radio that you want to use. A good example is the A10. You've got a separate radio for AM, another one for FM, and another one for UHF, and each one of those have their own separate mic activation. So you have to make sure you're using the right mic activation command to operate the correct radio. The UH-1 is along those same lines. It's not as specific, but you do have to use in the what's listed in the key commands as pilot's radio trigger, which the default key binding is right alt \\. If you try and use the regular just \/ command and you don't have easy communications enabled, that might not work. So if that doesn't work, then go ahead and use the right alt \\. So F5 for ATC, F1 for your airfield, F3 for startup.
Kudasi, in field, 1-1, request startup. Enfield 1-1, Kutaisi, cleared for startup.
Okay, so to start the aircraft, you need to press and hold the startup engine command, which you cannot click in the cockpit. It's hidden on the back end, the collective back here. I believe the default key binding is the home key, so you'll need to map that to something or just use the home key on the keyboard. But let's go ahead and zoom in. You're going to hold it until this gauge, the needle gets past the 40% mark. And once it's past 40, you can go ahead and let go. And just keep an eye on your engine gauges. Make sure that nothing looks abnormal. And once it's stabilized, go ahead and throttle up. Just slowly move this up until it's at its stops. Once the engine is up to speed, go back up to your electrical panel and select your inverter to on main for position. And switch the starter generator to standby, which is also the forward position. And way back behind you on the top panel, turn your radar altimeter on into the aft position. And you can set your minimum and maximum limits on the radar altimeter with these knobs here. So the left one is low altitude. You can just mouse wheel over it. And same thing for the high altitude. So you'll see an actual readout here in feet of your altitude above the ground. If you need to zero out your altimeter, you can go ahead and do it here with the knob in the lower left corner. And one thing I like to do is I like to set my compass card to match that of my standby compass, and that's using the bottom right knob. So I'll set this to about 130. If necessary, if it's cold, you can go ahead and turn on your de-ice down here to the forward position. And your pitot heat is way up here at the top, and that's to the forward position as well to turn on. And then once you're done, you can go ahead and put your position lights into the back steady position. And last but not least, you can go ahead and arm your countermeasures with the switch here into the forward position. And that's pretty much it. If you need to change your loadout, don't forget you need to change your rotary over here to INT, and then you can go ahead and use your mic activation to contact the ground crew to rearm. Just don't forget to switch it back to the appropriate channel to activate your radios to contact ATC for clearance and takeoff. That's pretty much it. At this point, you're good to go. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you.